Hello and welcome to In the Kitchen with Mary Mac. This week we're making apple dumplings. I love apple dumplings, but I don't like making them. I can say that in all honesty. They're not that bad. Kind of a different thing to make if you've never made an apple dumpling. Really, there's not a lot involved in them, but I don't know what it is about them that I always feel like it's a daunting thing to make. It probably takes altogether maybe like an hour and a half with baking time, but I don't know. I think it's my thoughts of looking at them. They look like so much work or so complicated, and it's just an apple wrapped in pie crust. So I'm going to tell you how to make apple dumplings, and I have a pie crust recipe for you too. So in order to do an apple dumpling, you want to peel and core apples. So you need a couple of tools. I usually peel apples with a paring knife. However, a vegetable peeler works very nicely for that too. And the other thing that a vegetable peeler works nice for is for coring your apples. Now, what you want is a vegetable peeler that's rather narrow, maybe like 3/8 of an inch wide, perhaps something around that range, to take the core out of your apple. So that's a tool that you need. If you have an apple corer, which I have one, but mine is like really big, so you'd have to have a really big apple to use it, I think. I've used it, but it makes such a big hole, you're like taking a lot of apple out. So I prefer the vegetable peeler with the narrower vegetable peeler. You'll need a 9x13, preferably glass baking dish to bake your apple dumplings in. And basically, you need, I would say, 6 to 8 apples depending on size. You don't want to get a great big apple, but you want to get one that's about a baseball size apple. So 6 to 8 cooking apples. I prefer Yellow Delicious because I like them better, but get what you prefer. Granny Smiths are going to be more tart and harder if you like that apple. You could use a Jonagold, or Braeburns are really nice to use. They're a good hard baking apple. So something like that. You'll need some white sugar. You'll need some cinnamon. And you'll need one recipe of pie crust, or one of the refrigerated box pie crusts that you can get at the grocery store that has 2 crusts in it. And you'll use both crusts. So a recipe of pie crust that makes 2 crusts and the other ingredients. Also, you might want to pick up some vanilla ice cream because that's really good with apple dumplings. Okay, first we're going to make the pie crust. This pie crust is a really old technique. Not sure if the recipe also was very old. I got the recipe probably about almost 35 years ago. Somebody gave me this recipe that their mom used. So I'm guessing that this recipe / technique is from the 1960s, and it's known as the Tupperware pie crust or the shaker pie crust. And you see it every once in a while, especially like in a really old recipe book or something like that. It might or magazine or something. It might turn up. So basically, you could make any pie crust recipe with this technique. And what you need is a medium-sized bowl with a really good, secure, snap-on lid. So that's where the Tupperware part comes in. Apparently, this was a recipe that they used at Tupperware parties to sell one of their bowls that they had. And I can't think of the name of the bowl. I just read it the other day. I can't remember the name of the bowl that they called it. But you would put part of the ingredients in, you put the lid on and burp it like Tupperware always says. You burp your lid. Make sure it's on securely, shake it, put the water in, shake it again, and then your pie crust is ready. And this is a nice recipe, especially for someone like me who tends to overwork pie crust. So I hadn't used this in a while, and I've said many times on this podcast that I have lost my pie touch because I work with bread dough all the time. And when I go to do pastries, like delicate pastries, I tend to work it too much. So I had a big talk with myself and said, listen, you can do this. You could do it before. You should be able to do this. So I did it, and it came out very good. So have a big talk with yourself. Don't overwork the crust. And this is the Tupperware shaker pie crust recipe, or so I was told. So you need 2 cups of all-purpose flour, a half teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of baking powder, and you want to put those in your medium to large bowl with a nice tight fitting lid and mix them together well. Like you can take a wire whisk and kind of stir those dry ingredients together. Okay, then you want to take 3/4 cup of Crisco shortening and kind of chunk that up into pieces and sprinkle that in your flour, and 2 tablespoons of soft butter, and put those in the bowl with your flour mixture. And then you want to put the lid on securely, put it on securely, and shake that. And shake it and move the bowl around. You can, shake it sideways, up and down, whatever. And it takes several minutes, but you shake it, open it up, take a look at it. It should start to resemble little balls of dough, like it'll start to clump together because the fat's being incorporated into the dry ingredients. When you have it nice and clumpy looking in there, then you're going to put in 6 tablespoons of cold water and put it all in, sprinkle it all around all over it, okay? Once you get your 6 tablespoons of cold water in there, put your lid on and shake it until it forms a ball. And it'll form a nice ball. It'll actually come together and form a nice ball. If it seems like it doesn't want to gather, put another half teaspoon of water in, and that might be what you need, and it'll come together. Just shake it till it forms a ball. Now, once you've got that ball formed, you can put the lid on that and set it aside for a minute while you prep your apples. So, take your apples, and the easiest way to do this is if you try to peel them first and then take the core out, they're real slippery. So, let's be thinking, take your core out first, okay? And the way you do that is to very carefully take your vegetable peeler, poke it down along the side of the core, and watch the bottom of the apple to make sure you're coming out near the core. You may have to adjust it a couple times, but once you get it, where it's going through nice, go down, move it over a little bit, go down again so you're like making a little circle of cuts around the core. And then you take that apple peeler and turn it, and it'll basically cut that whole core out, and then you can poke it right out of the apple. And they come out pretty easy doing that. If you're using a regular apple core, obviously you do the same thing. Put your apple core in there and give it a twist, and it'll go right around that core and bring it out. Make sure there's no seeds stuck in there. Boy, I had one that I had a heck of a time getting all the seeds out. Make sure there's no seeds and clean it out good, so there's nothing left inside. And then peel your apples and set them on a plate. Now, take your dough. If you're using the homemade dough, what I did, I just divided it into 6 equal pieces. I patted it out into a little flat circle, and I sliced it into 6 pieces. If you're using the refrigerated pie crust, you would be more likely to get 8 apple dumplings out of that. And what you want to do with your refrigerated pie dough is let that sit out to come to room temperature, and then put that on a floured surface and use a rolling pin to make it into a big rectangle, and then cut that into 4 equal pieces and use that for on your apples, okay? So now we're going back to the Tupperware dough. So I divided it into 6 equal pieces, and I took each piece and formed it into a little ball and patted it and put it onto a good floured surface and, flipped it back and forth, and then I rolled it out with a rolling pin to about a 6-inch circle. I put my apple in the middle, and then you want to sprinkle a teaspoon of sugar inside and around the outside of your apple. Then take your cinnamon, and you only need a pinch of cinnamon, so just put a little bit of cinnamon on there, just a little shake, okay? Bring your dough up on opposite sides, bring your dough up and press it together, and then do the same thing the other direction, and then pinch it all up to seal. You might have to take your fingertips and a little bit of water and put on there to make it seal. I didn't have any trouble with mine sealing because it was very nice and soft dough. So just seal it up real good, and then take your apple that you've just covered and put it into your greased glass baking dish. Okay? Now, a 9 by 13 held 6 apples comfortably. You don't want them touching, but get all your apples done, put them into your baking dish, and then you're going to bake them for about 40 to 45 minutes at 400 degrees. So what I did is I baked them for 22 minutes, and then I turned the pan around and baked them for 22 more minutes. I didn't cover the pan or anything. And when they get nice and golden brown looking, they're done. You don't want them to collapse. Some people bake them so long that the apple collapses inside, and you don't want to do that because you don't want this big piece of pie crust just standing there. So that's about the right amount of time, 40 to 45 minutes. Okay, take them out and let them cool a little bit, and then very carefully take a spatula and scoop them out of your pan, put them in your dish or bowl, and serve with a nice scoop of ice cream, and there you have a delicious apple dumpling. These keep very well. You make them up, put them in an airtight container, and keep them in the refrigerator for a couple of days. So you could actually make them, if you wanted them for, say, Thanksgiving, you could make them a couple days ahead of time, put them in a container and keep them in your refrigerator, and then warm them in the oven a little bit and serve them. Or you can make these up and not bake them, wrap them in plastic wrap, put them in a container, and put them in your freezer. And when you're ready to use them, just take out what you want, put it in a baking dish, frozen, and put it in your oven, 400 degrees, just like we said now, and bake them. They may take a little bit longer, like 15 minutes longer, but they bake right up and just as delicious as fresh. Okay, so there's your apple dumpling recipe and your Tupperware shaker pie crust recipe. So now you can go out and try to make some for yourself. I hope they come out good. I know I really enjoyed mine last night. It was very delicious.
And make sure to check us out online on Facebook and Instagram at Mary Mac Bakehouse, on Twitter at Mobile Mary Mac and Mary Mac Podcast, and on our website, marymacpodcast.com.
Thanks a lot for listening if you did, and if you didn't, too bad for you.